So we've talked about the long history of the Hulk in the MCU and how it's kind of an ignored film. Let's talk about, I guess, some of the conflict that happens between the actors and really no giving of advice, which is kind of strange considering that's all the MCU is really about. So as most of you know, Mark Ruffalo is the Hulk in the MCU. Before him, there was Edward Norton, and a complex relationship. He rewrote many of the elements of the script for Universal. Marvel Studios stepped in and said, keep the character, but set it in this universe and we won't take the character back from you, so you can hang on to the rights. That's why Universal holds on to the Hulk, and Marvel can't produce new movies on him. So he has to be involved in Marvel Cinematic Universe movies without having a standalone. And Mark Ruffalo took over for Norton for the Avengers after a bad fallout where Edward Norton shot and rewrote about 40 minutes of the movie that never made the cut. And this was like the Bruce Banner cut, where it was more about the character trying to find a cure and really develop who Bruce Banner was. So many times in the MCU we hear, oh, this actor, he's taking on the mantle or going over, so he talks to this other actor and they get along, he gives them some advice and things move on forward. And we've certainly heard this a lot when it comes to new characters appearing in the MCU. You know, when the Falcon, Anthony Mackie, got on, he talked to Sebastian Stan and he gave him advice on how to do the sidekick thing, and he was there with him on set to be like, hey, maybe you should play it like this to be different than how I was, which is why the characters feel so different. It's certainly interesting that the Incredible Hulk is like the black sheep of the Marvel family. They acknowledge it exists. We know the events happen, but it's like it didn't almost, right? It's like they play it like in a very coy way. And Edward Norton recently, after throwing Marvel under the bus during that interview on, I think on SNL a couple weeks ago, you know, he came back and he's like, nah, I didn't really give any advice to anybody. And Mark Ruffalo was like, he'd never really even talked to me and he just didn't care. And it kind of goes to show you how Hollywood can really impact your career, whether you're nice or not, because being real, since The Incredible Hulk, what has Edward Norton been in? I mean, he made bad with Universal for that movie, because he didn't promote them. Certainly he butted heads with Louis Leterrier, who directed the movie. And then Marvel Studios and Disney bought out everything right there and put it out, so he hasn't worked for either of those companies. That's two major companies in Hollywood, which leaves like two other ones out there. So it's one of these things where you really have to think about how Hollywood has kind of changed. Back in the day, you could say some stuff and go to the other studio, but now that it's just kind of getting smaller and smaller and there's, you know, I guess the corporate overlords are starting to take over and there's, you know, less small companies and more big ones, kind of goes to show you how the Hollywood industry has changed and how Edward Norton might have wanted to choose his words more carefully. And then now he's not even there. And it certainly would have been interesting or nice if they could have brought him back for the anniversary shoot, you know, where all the actors were there. But then they didn't even invite him or mention him or that movie. What a weird relationship that is.